Looks good. Let's see. I think it's all up. Yes, somebody's here. Good morning. Looks like we're up and running. A bit too dark here. So how's it going to go today? Who knows? We'll see. Not quite sure how long we can keep doing this before people get bored of all these dots and tentacles, but not too much of this left now. A couple more days. Wrong way. If people watching, if you're just a morning viewer, I mean, only the morning Tokyo session, you'll see it's quite a bit different. We had a good 3-hour session yesterday, last night. So I moved along quite a bit. 2 hours on camera, and then I did some more after turning it off. So. Also, this is the first time, I think, to be doing this on the weekends, so I don't know if there'll be more people out there or fewer, I don't know. Fewer, I think, because perhaps a lot of the people who've been watching, at work, I guess. Okay, dots it is. This is a fun part for me to see where everybody is, checking in from all these different places around the world. I intellectually understand what's happening here, the internet and where it all is, but I just still don't know. I still don't get it. I don't grok it. What's the word? Really understand it inside your body. So. When you're talking to a guy here who, I was born in Britain, but we emigrated to Canada and we went over there by steamship. That's my era, getting on a ship and saying goodbye to one country and thinking that we'll never see it again. That's what the mindset that I grew up with. Even more from Germany. What's this? Germans are supposed to be in bed now, aren't they? What time is it there? It's like midnight, I guess. Not so bad. My brother also lives in Germany. He lives in another place called Bochum. Watching from my passenger seat, it says. So, God, that's even more of a head bump for me, I sit here working here. Someone's on a bus or something and they can see it. We have a question here. My family sure gets around. Yeah, we're split up as far as we can do it. We have Skype all together, but I'm here. My kids are 8 hours ahead of me in Vancouver, and my brother's 8 hours ahead of them in Germany. We can't physically get any farther apart than we are. There's a question here about the wood grain, how the wood grain guides the hand and blade when carving. That's easy, actually. One of the reasons why we've picked cherry wood, or why the Japanese traditionally picked this hard cherry wood, is because it's, perhaps as you can see it, there's no real clear visible difference between the winter wood and the summer wood. If you think of a wood like pine, that white wood with the strong dark brown grain lines, that's winter wood and summer wood. That plant grows all year long, but during the winter it grows more densely. So the winter grain, the dark grain, is really hard. This cherry doesn't have that huge difference. So ideally, if we've picked a good piece of wood and it was cut from the log in the proper direction and it's dried properly, ideally, then there's almost no grain. That's a theoretical situation. There is actual grain, but not enough that not enough to make it impossible to carve like this. And probably the wood you're seeing right now under the lens. I don't think you can see any visible grain. It's all pretty much of a uniform color. But yet this is cut on the plank. There is grain here. Okay, see it there? See the darker stripes and the lighter and the darker. Where it affects more is that on any given cut, like right now when I'm cutting around, if I'm cutting in one of these circles, that's with the grain and that's across the grain. So yeah, it affects the way you dig your knife in, but you have to be aware of which way it's running all the time. And then when it switches to the other tool, when I was clearing out this stuff in the middle, of course the grain goes one way or another way. But overall, the kind of carving we do here, assuming the wood is a good piece of wood, grain is not... I can't imagine trying to carve on a piece of pine or something. Just be impossible. Pop that out. Someone could be watching from a plane. Yeah. Yeah, cherry, I know there's many factors. It's not just simply because of the grain. I know, of course, there's many more things to it. I know the real big deal about cherry, why cherry and not, people are asking why not use walnut or maple or you want something harder, use ebony or something. Of course, there's many factors. And we need a wood that's fairly hard, obviously, because we want to carve small details. If it's a soft wood, the details wouldn't be there. So checkbox for hard for the detail. We also need, because we're going to make many copies from any given block, we want a wood that's hard and long-lasting. So another checkbox on the hard side. But we're printing, unlike in the West, where they're using oil-based inks rolled on top of a really hard surface, which could be a wooden block, or it could be, for example, a copper plate or something. The Western inks will roll on anything dense and hard. We're using water-based ink, always water-based. We don't even use the word ink, it's water-based pigments. And if we had a metal plate, for example, or a piece of wood that's too hard and dense, the water wouldn't seep down inside it. The water would just sit on top. It'd be like, raindrops on a piece of metal. So if the wood's too hard, it's no good. I couldn't use something like, a piece of ebony or something, a really rock hard, one of those tropical woods. It's got to be a kind of wood where the water will go seep inside it. So those two things are a little bit in opposition to each other. Or we need a wood that's hard enough to take detail and to survive, and yet still has good moisture absorption. And cherry, Japanese cherry, just hits that. And it's not a coincidence. I mean, Japanese printmaking grew up in an environment where they had Japanese trees, and this was chosen. And so, of course, the printmaking technology matches the materials that were available. So. It's funny how all the parts of the thing come together. And we were talking just in last night's stream about the first experiences of one of the older craftsmen, the first experiences when he went to work. And the thing that was really impressed on him most strongly was that he had to work fast. And that was multifaceted. Part of it was, time is money. Get productive, make stuff, you'll get paid, But also part of it was that we have to work fast because of the way that the wood, soaks up moisture, whatever. If we laid on the pigment and then a phone call comes and I pick up the phone, within seconds, while I'm chatting with this person trying to desperately get off the phone, the block absorbs that moisture, a bit of it soaks in, a bit of it dries out, and that impression would be spoiled, or you cancel it and do it again. We can't stop. Once we start any given printing run, any disruption whatsoever spoils the rhythm of the work. But people working with oil-based pigments or whatever, I mean, I've never done it, so I can't speak in detail, but it seems to me that you get your brayer, you roll the ink out on that plate, and you go for lunch or something and come back and put the paper on. I don't know. But it doesn't seem to be as really strongly time sensitive as ours does. So that's the way that we make prints has grown up in tandem with the tools and materials and supplies. So the Japanese worker, the Japanese craftsman, it's so fast, Not in a frantic fast way, but in a keep moving way. It's great. It makes us very, very productive. Video, the Ito Susumu video, yeah. So when I made that night, that video, I don't know what to say, it's a story I'd wanted to tell. His daughter had just brought me that piece of wood, I guess a couple of weeks before. I'd been wanting to tell people about it, but I wasn't sure what format. It didn't fit any of the other, the videos we've been doing. Here's the carving, here's the printing. It's a process video. It was just actually a story, but it didn't fit my video pattern. So I didn't know what to do. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't, you couldn't write the script or anything. So I just got some, cards and made a couple of memo notes on it. What if I told them about this, and then maybe the story should go to there, and the story should go to there, maybe. And I just made some notes, like 1 point, 1 point, 1 point, And I put them up on the wall here in front of my bench. It's about 2 meters away from me, and you can see during that video where I pause and stuff and sort of just look around blankly, think, what should I do next? And actually my eyes are searching the wall to try and find the next index card and the next point. And by the time I got to the end of it, I had skipped a couple of cards, I had jumped a bit, but whatever. The other thing is, I'd expected it to be about 10 minutes long. YouTube sort of has these guidelines and all this sort of stuff, what to do. And I think one of the basic guidelines is think of 5 minutes as your marker, your max. Anything over 5, people are not going to look at it or whatever. I forget the exact number. So I'd figured whatever, we could stretch this thing to 10 minutes or whatever. Made my 10 cards or something, whatever it was. I'll spend a minute on each point. And I put the camera on and started to tell a story. Got the the things gathered around that I was going to show. I'm lost now. Move the block and I get lost. Where am I? Here we are. And there's only one cut. One part I got really scrambled and whatever, so I had to reach over, turn the camera off, turn it back on. So there's one cut in the thing. Then I get it into iMovie. I record it just after dinner, and I get it into iMovie and start doing this and start doing that, put it together. Trying to clean up the audio, this and that. And then it turns out it's not 10 minutes long, it's 28 minutes long. So I'm now, what am I going to do with this thing? 28 minutes, it's useless. It'll just die on YouTube. No one's ever going to click this. But it was late at night by then, and just Dave, whatever, just put it up and sort it out. I considered splitting it into two, part 1, part 2, 15 minutes, 15 minutes. And thought, if I do that, nobody on this planet is going to move to part 2. So just put it up on one part. Put up and went to bed. Get up in the morning and it's got 30,000 views. Somebody had seen it and they had posted it to Reddit documentaries, which I hadn't known existed. My stuff usually gets posted to Reddit artisan videos, but somebody had posted it to Reddit documentaries, and it went, whatever, as I said, overnight for me, in about 8 hours, it went to 30,000 views. And it just hasn't stopped since then. And when you look at the analytics in the backside that YouTube gives me, it shows, how long people stayed on it and that sort of stuff, It's fabulous. There's a huge drop-off at the beginning. People that have clicked the link, what's this? And then within 5 seconds, they're gone because it just looks so boring or whatever. But once people stay a minute, that's it. They stay right to the end. And I think that now YouTube's algorithms and stuff are highly valuing videos where people actually seem to be, what's the word? I don't know. Retained. I don't know what word they use for it. Okay, here we are. Now the dot section done. Where should we go next? These dots all are going to need adjustments and trimming later. I can't see their shape at this point. Some of them, they're just too boring. Some of them are just straight triangles, straight triangles, straight triangles. And after I do a test print, I can see them on a sheet in front of me. And you can come back and nick it here and nick it there and put a little bevel on one corner and curve one side there. Put a bit more taste into them. I don't mean, weeks of work going minutely over each one. I'm just passing over the block, looking at the test proof. Oh, here's one that can be adjusted. There's one that can be adjusted. So I'll be back over all this territory, just a little bit. But I can't see it. Okay, where are we going? Here's another piece. Let's do this. I should try and have a look at this. No specific questions. So, those dots are not alive. Shut up, you. Let's see you do any better. Every line and every dot shall be alive. It's a goal, you've got to think of it that way, I guess, from his point of view, his brush. As he was drawing the stuff, it's different from me carving. Excuse me a sec, move the block here. I got to get a better rag underneath it, it's getting torn. It doesn't slide anymore. And the dot's living, when Hokusai's drawing it, you can see what he's trying to get at, because his brush is wet and the ink is dripping and his hand is moving and it's So I get the idea, the thing that he's trying to think of, Once it gets down to this end of the process now, though, it's hard to say, let me cut this dot so that it's going to dance, And I'm actually not even cutting the dot, I'm cutting away the stuff around it. It's a negative process rather than the positive process that the drawing is, So it's not so much that I can make them live and dance, but if I don't do my job well, I can kill them. I think that's more the way for me to think about it myself. Preserving the energy and stuff that's there in the drawing, rather than trying to think about myself adding life and adding energy. Just making sure I don't bugger up what the designer did. Maybe. There's a grain mark here. It's darker right there. It's hard. It's resistant. It pops out into the smooth grain at the other side. Where are we going with this one? Whatever, let's get the base end of it finished first before we worry about what's up there. Okay. Oh, we gotta get that top part off. Sorry for the twisting. These are nice. Coming into V's like this, you've got to cut a bit more than what you see. If I just cut exactly the dark shape that I see, then pigment will go in and we'll have a smaller V. As I was saying the other day, you've got to cut the block that prints the line you see. You don't cut the line you see, you cut the block that prints the line you see. Okay, suckers. Where we were, Ghibli question. So, how long have you been running? I started at the hour. I've been running 25 minutes or so. Ghibli. It's difficult. I know it's not totally zero finished, but the more we learn about it, the more we see that it's almost certainly not going to happen. I know. The number one point to all that is it's not Studio Ghibli that I need to be talking to, and that video and that presentation was directed to the wrong people. I know. The studio themselves don't own or don't have any publishing rights. When video rights and audio rights and music rights and all this stuff, it's all different. And the people, it's Tokuma Shoten, a publishing company, which actually is part of the roots of Ghibli Studio. Ghibli came out of Tokuma Shoten, and they were a book publisher, I guess, whatever. And they're the people who apparently own all, rights to sort of like putting things on paper, imagery and books and posters and whatever, that anything to do with those characters. And it's owned by, or at least partly or mostly, I don't know, owned by Suzuki Toshio-san, the guy who, Miyazaki-san's partner in Ghibli. So. That's the first problem. It's not Ghibli we should be talking to. And the second is, various people who are not knowledgeable about this have advised me about this and stuff. And they said that whenever there's print licensing, people are going to publish a book or a comic book of the anime or whatever, which has all been done. It's all done on regional basis. And they said if you look at some book, you'll see it's all rights reserved for Japan or Australia or whatever, blah blah blah. And they said you will never ever ever be able to afford to talk to those people about licensing on a global basis, which is of course what we need. If we do ever make prints of those, we'd have to be able to send them to people all over the world. And they said it'll never happen. The only way it could possibly be done is you would have to put so much money on the table up front that they said, Dave, just forget about it. So, well, I haven't forgotten about it, and it seems to me that those advice that people were giving me was sort of traditional business practice. That's fine, if I were, some large publishing company, publishing books, you approach it that direction. But it just seems to me, and this is maybe just some pie in the sky, that if I could just, whatever, maybe get a chance to chat with Suzuki-san himself about this, and point out to him the kind of thing we're trying to do, help preserve our craft, and that sort of stuff, tie that in. And Miyazaki-san himself has these projects that he's trying to do here and there with children and children vacation time and getting kids out in the countryside and stuff. And he needs money for those projects. So try and do a sort of a thing that's not a normal business license thing, but it's just that we have permission to use this, and in return we will donate to their charity for each copy we make, something like that. That doesn't need the $500,000 on the table up front. But I don't know. I'm just merely making noise. I don't know. There's another reason I haven't really put this high on my priority list to try and push that, is that we're really struggling at the moment with production side. We've got fans everywhere. People are loving our prints. We've got the new series starting in a couple of weeks with that Kickstarter campaign. We'll have another good subscription series starting. It's going to be a little bit different. Next year's subscription series is something quite a bit different. It's also going to be something that we're going back to a simpler print and something cheaper. We're really going to try and catch a bunch of people who would like to support our work but who haven't been able to afford it at some of the current levels. So anyway, the point being, we're looking good for the distribution side, sales side, collecting side, but we're really in trouble on the manufacturing side. Our 4 young ladies that do the printmaking here in our shop in Asakusa, people who've seen the videos, they've only seen 3 working at once. And it's been 1.5 years since we lost one. She got pregnant and left, and she's supposedly coming back, but it's not going to be for a long, long, long time. And I guess I can probably let the news out now. Last week I got the same news from young Ayumi-san, the girl who's been in many of our videos. She's going to leave us for the same reasons. So we're going to be down to 2 up here in our workroom, just at the same time we're sending up the new project, which is already booked and blocks are carved. So for me to even think about a Ghibli project right now, just it's not on my radar. I'm sorry. If we can get some more people here, get ourselves more stable. But at the moment, even if Suzuki-san phoned me this morning and said, "Okay, got it. Love you, Dave. Let's go," I couldn't take on the project. So. I should copy some more of this stuff. So. That news about Ayumi-san, it really, really is bad news for me. Those of you who've been following our project to reprint the Doi hunger prints, the Shin hunger prints, from Tsuchiya Koitsu and all that garage full of blocks. Of the 3 ladies I've got upstairs, she's the only one that can do that work. The other 2 are not at that level. And that's it. Bang. She's done. And they're here. She knows about planning a couple of kids. So that's it. She's out of here for probably 8-10 years. By then, different stage of her life. She'll remember doing this, want to come back, who knows. It's extremely frustrating. 5 years of training. From zero. 5 years. She gets this good. It's my own idiocy, you know. Not making a plan B here. Anyway, enough of that. Whatever. I'll work it out. We'll figure out something. Whatever. Oops, what have I done there? Get on that line. Can't quite see it. Here we are. Tease it out. He says, I missed that. Was that Aimi-san? Yeah, it's Aimi-san. She's gone. She's pregnant. Good news for her, of course, I suppose. But this is a real blow for us. A real blow for us. And, you know, probably when I read this stream later, there'll be people saying, I can come do it. I can come do it. You know, just starting from zero. The problem was 5 years ago. This was just before we had Ukiyo-e Heroes. You know, I took on 5 people all at once, five young women all at once, with the idea being that we'll build ourselves a workshop and we'll find stuff to make and we'll show the world that women can do this. It's not just old dudes that do this work. You know, it was a kind of a nice goal. And part of the reason I did it with women, and people ask me this all the time, Dave, why did you hire just girls? You know, well, actually, I don't. We have some boys here as well, you know, on staff. Lee-san helps me build the place and whatever. But why did I hire 5 girls to do this printing? The point was I can't get boys. Or this is 5 years ago. You know the Japanese system, you know, they've got this exam hell and whatever, and you pass these exams and you go to universities and they're all ranked, and good or bad, that's the way the system is here. So when the kids come out of these universities, the ones who have been, I'm going to be careful what word I use here. It's not a question of smart. The ones who have gone through the system, they've been able to do the studying and keep their nose down and do whatever it took to get through it. They come out with top universities and they're creamed off. They go to the Toyotas, the Mitsubishi Bank, and whatever. You know, the big companies take all these people out of the universities. So it's kind of a filter. As much as Westerners might look at this as a kind of joke, it really does work. Kids that are go-getters and that apply themselves and that can say, I'm going to see this goal. Those kids are all filtered by the system and scooped up by corporate Japan. We in the West are kind of cynical about this, but from the Japanese society's point of view, it's a really efficient system. Smart kids, again, using just that word in a single point, smart kids are filtered out and away they go. And what you've got left are the ones who are not so whatever. I got to qualify that, because if I had been in this system when I was a kid, I would have failed. Absolutely, I did. I'm a dropout. I went to university and I dropped out partway through the first year. So in the Japanese structure, I would have been a total failure. I never would have gone to Toyota. I would have just hung around for a while. maybe tried music or something, or fooled around with this or fooled around with that, got a job with some place, and just, that's it. Just a minute here. So here in Japan then, you've got the go-getter kids are gone. They're not available to me. None of them would ever think of coming to work for someone like me. I'm not a company. There's no pension. There's no job security. This place could be closed tomorrow. Everybody knows that. There's no stability here. And for a young person in Japan, that's really critical. Some young boy, if he worked here, he can forget about getting married, because no girl, when he's talking to the girl and she says, "Where do you work?" and he says, "Well, woodblock prints in this place," and she's just going to turn away. It's just the nature of the beast. So 5 years ago, when I'm trying to gather people up, I can't get the top level people. I can't get boys, because there's no way they can afford to work here and simply, quote unquote, throw away their future. But for girls, young women, it's a different story. They're expected to work anywhere, any place like this. Even when they go to Sumitomo Bank, it's to make tea for a few years and supply fodder for the boys to find marriage partners. So I can get girls, and I can get smart girls, because there's so few good opportunities for them. They're not worried about job security, career stability. They want something interesting to do. So for me, this was cool. I got some sharp young girls who are interested in this. And it's all been really happy and wonderful for the past 5 years. They're not all as good as Aimi-san. The 5 girls that I got there, they're all still with me. Aimi-san became the top printer. I won't list all the names because they're all different skills, but they've all filtered out into different jobs here. One young girl is doing print parties because she speaks English well and is really personable and sociable. Someone else is doing part-time printing for us. So they haven't all become top printers, but they've all got a good position here. But now, as we've seen, the other side of the equation is coming out. The reason I was able to get them is because it wasn't permanent. It wasn't a career for them. So my mistake was not in hiring girls, it was in hiring only girls. And this is coincidence. Out of the 5, the 2 that are pregnant are the 2 that turned out to be the best printers. The gods are just looking at me and just laughing. The girls that are doing print packing, print parties, helping in the shop, they're still here. The 2 top printers are now off making babies. Actually, I should be careful. What's the questions here? Excuse me. I promised myself I wasn't going to talk about that topic. Whatever. Where are we here? Question. Oh, there's 3 questions in the box. Right here. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Let's see. Let me look at the more questions. Okay, all quite different questions. Number one, how long does it take to train a new printer? I know we covered this quite a lot last night. I'm not quite sure how to do this, because the same question was here last night. The same question is here today. I probably talked about it for 15 minutes last night or something. And am I going to do the same thing today? It's always different people. I don't know how to handle this going forward. Anyway, I can try and touch it again, I guess. The question is, Aimi-san's gone. It took 5 years to train her. Is it going to take 5 years to train the next person? How long does it take to train a printer? And there's no single answer for that. And as we were talking about last night, if you imagine an ongoing workshop, not a new venture like ours, but a stable ongoing workshop, has printers at different levels. There's, the old dude in the corner who's been there for 90 years. There's somebody else who's been there for 30 years. There's a level, a real mix of levels of people. And the shop itself, I'm speaking of the old days, the shop itself is doing a real mix of different kinds of work. I think the examples I gave last night, they're doing everything from food wrappers up to top beautiful ukiyo-e prints, food wrappers, one color, one sheet of paper to wrap onigiri for the local delicatessen or something. And then difficult prints. Again, I'm speaking of the traditional system when the woodblock world was the printing business. So the question is then, the young apprentice comes in on his first day of work, and we're thinking, how long is it going to be to train him before he's productive? The answer is nothing. On his first morning, he is going to be productive. They sit him down at a bench. Here's the tool, pick it up, there's your stack of paper. You have to print one color because it's a food wrapper. Watch the guy next to you explain for 5 minutes. Go for it. So on his first day, he prints, a few hundred food wrappers. They sell for a few pennies each. He gets a few pennies. That's the way. It doesn't away he goes. And it goes from there. And the workshop is full of all different levels of work. And each kid, bit by bit, as he sorts out what to do and gets better at what to do, he finds his own level. And the ones that end up having a really good feel for it and a really good sense for how to mix colors or something, they end up doing this and that and this and that. And at some point in time, they become the guy in the corner who's the master there. So there's no answer for your question. How long does it take to become a woodblock printer? In the traditional setup, 1 day is the answer. You see what I'm getting at? I'm not being sarcastic about that. You can be productive right from the beginning. And from then on, assuming there's work, assuming it's a workshop with all those different kinds of work available, you're up and running right away. And we're trying bit by bit to replicate that situation here. When I was all by myself 5 years ago, I was the master, the guy in the corner doing very difficult, complex work. I hired those 5 girls, and in order to try and find something to do for them, we tried to create simpler work. We got some old Meiji blocks that were literally for food wrappers and tried to train them on it. We went to a local snack maker to try and see if he would offer his customers an option for plus 100 yen. They get a woodblock printed wrapper for the food. And he said, sure, let's try it. So knowing how these workshops worked, I tried bit by bit. This is back in 2011 and early 2012. I tried to set up a structure, and there was 2 things that went wrong. One is that with all these people around training, there was no core of established printers to do the training. So I had to get away from my own bench, show them this, show them that, run back to my bench, do a bit of printing, come back, show them this, show them that. My own productivity went from call it 100 as the base level, went down to like 10. I'd lost huge amounts of productivity. Instead of getting a print out the door every month, I got like every 3 months. So the income crashed. The guy was doing some food wrappers for us, but the income from that was just trivial because these girls couldn't produce, and it just, So we struggled along for a few months until the spring of 2012, and then that's it. I said, we can't do this anymore because, we're done. There's just no money. It was a nice idea, but you can't jump from zero up to an established workshop in one step. I told them that we're going to close it down. Ami-san was one of the 5. She was one of the people there. And they were all like, no, don't stop. We're having fun. Let's do this, cut our pay or whatever. And the guy was like, I can cut your pay, but it's still going to be 0, whatever. I know it. And whatever, it's a different story. But what happened was just at that same time, a letter came from Jed. Email came in from Jed. Dear Mr. Bull, I got this idea, I could make parodies of video game characters, and as I've told the story many times before, I told him, dear Mr. Henry, it's an interesting sort of idea, but I don't need the legal trouble, and whatever. And I turned him down. And he pushed. I had my back against the wall anyway, so whatever, in for a dime, in for a dollar. Let's try it. We made the first one, ran it up on Kickstarter, and everywhere. Those 5 girls weren't capable of doing those prints. I did the carving on them, and I did some printing on the first ones myself. It soon became totally overwhelming, of course. So I hired outside printers to help me with doing the heroes' work. And then we started the chibi heroes, that little tiny version of the heroes, for the express purpose of having work for those girls. And it did it. It put us over the top there. So. But then the mistake I made was then not starting a new batch of people. It's just been so busy. We took the money from the Kickstarter campaign, opened the Asakusa shop, and I should have started a new batch, including some boys maybe, you know. But I just kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. Not laziness, just there's so much going on here, you know. It's in our business plan, you know. The first thing about this new Patreon campaign was to help me get away from the paperwork and back to the bench. And the second thing on the Patreon campaign is to do another round of intake, get some more people. Just Ayumi-san and her husband have just moved a little bit too quickly for me. I gotta be careful, they'd be embarrassed if I... So I don't know, right now, the next couple of months, I'm in a jam. Next couple of months, next couple of years. This octopus project can be okay, actually. The carving is quite involved, but this one is not going to be all that difficult to print. You know. It makes sense that way, because remember the original was a simple, small book, a porn book. And there's no way they would have designed something that needed complex, difficult printing. The book had to be slammed out, bang, 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 bang. And we're going to print it carefully. We're going to do it carefully, but it's not inherently such a complex design to print. So, multiple overlap gradations and deep sky tones and, you know, all that stuff. They don't exist on this print. So, we'll do it attractively, but... So the girls here, Ishikawa-san, Suba-san, they'll be able to print this. Could you try something like a misprint mystery package? Make income on training prints. There's lots and lots and lots of ideas about that. We are not going to sell misprints. We're not going to sell, you know, a great wave where one of the blue blocks was misregistered. I just don't want that stuff out in the world. When you've got the story attached to it, this was a trainee print and it helped Dave's workshop get established, that's okay. But 2 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, it's separated from the story. And all we've got is a bad print out there in the world. Disattached from the story that made it make sense. So no, we're not going to sell the reject prints. I know, but part of our longer term plan, I wrote a book before I started this. Just when I was hiring those 5 girls, 5 girls 5 or 6 years ago. It wasn't just out of the blue. I can't say a business plan, because that sounds like your spreadsheets and money and all that sort of stuff. No, but I had a vision plan of where we want to go, what kind of place I did want to set up and what kind of place I did want to run. And it's written, it's in book form. I should post it somewhere maybe, whatever, later. I can't think too many things here at once. And anyway, in that prospected business, you know, how we could make this as a business. There absolutely is indeed, in the workshop, that the future projected Mokuhankan workshop, where there's experienced men and trainees and whatever. And we do have a shop, you know, that projected shop looks something similar to the shop we've got now. And in there is a trainee corner. And it's not that they were reject prints, but they were prints that were made. They're carved by the trainee carvers and printed by the trainee printers. So they're at a simpler technical level. And they sell very cheaply. You know, it's the $1, $5, $10 corner. None of us make any money on them, but that money goes towards the trainees. So yes, there is a plan? There is a plan in place for how to do that. How to build that workshop that has step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, all the way up to the top difficult prints. Because that's a core part of this. Without that ladder in process, none of the rest of it can be done. So we do have a plan for that. It's just getting past these earlier stages. If I'd had 12 workers, having 2 of them pregnant is no big deal. Having 4 workers and having 2 of them pregnant is perhaps going to be fatal. I don't know. There were questions. So sorry, there was a couple more questions in the same batch as that. Did you have a hard time learning Japanese? How long did it take you to speak the language fluently? Again, no numbers. People ask the questions that sort of have numbers, and I don't know. I have never actually studied this thing in terms of getting the textbooks out and sitting down and writing. Partly that's my character. I really have a difficult time sitting in a chair and some guy up front is talking, and I can't do that. I had real trouble with it when I was a kid. And I can't do it. I just can't go to school. I can't study. So it's all been off the cuff, which as any Japanese who hears me talk understands, because they can hear the kind of things that are missing from my speech that would have been learned under a more formal education system. So where there's 4 skills, right? It's speaking, listening, reading, and writing. Speaking and listening on a normal, everyday, casual conversation level, I'm okay. And where I got better at that was after, starting the day after my divorce. I was living here in Japan with my 2 little kids and a Japanese woman, and she and I spoke in English together. The kids spoke Japanese to me. I spoke English to them. Typical, actually, very, very typical situation. Most families of that ethnic makeup fall into that pattern. And I was, at the time when we first came here, I wasn't, of course, selling prints. I was making them for training, but I wasn't selling any. So my whole life, each day was in English. I taught English here in our house, not here in Asakusa, but in our house. So my daily life was English, and it would have gone on all that time. But she left, we got divorced, and that's it. The day she's gone, the phone rings, whatever, pick it up, and mushi mushi, and away you go. Someone knocks at the door, you answer it, and there's somebody there, blah, 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 blah. You call your 3-year-old kid, Himi-chan comes and helps me, and Himi-chan sits there as an interpreter. Again, that's also common, very, very common. But that's it, you're thrown in the deep end, so things change really quickly, of course. And if you've got any kind of, I don't think I have skill. I was a musician, most of from my teens up till I became an adult. I was a musician, not inherently a good musician, but I was good at one thing. You could listen and copy, listen and copy, pick it up. That's what, making music is, listening and joining in. And that's what you need for language, You hear it, you spit it out, you hear it, you spit it out. So within that couple of years after getting divorced, it really came together very quickly. But that's speaking and listening. And I have never, to this day, done the training necessary to be able to write, pick up either a fude brush or a pencil or a pen, and okay, let's learn these characters one by one by one. I've never done that. And that's a conscious decision on my part. So I don't write Japanese, either with a brush or a pen. I'll type it in my word processor, but I don't write it. And as I said, that was a conscious decision because you just simply have to do the hours. And I did the math. I'd rather carve. And it's sometimes quite embarrassing because younger generation of people now, people coming to Japan who have, say, studied, they've taken Japanese in college back in America or Germany or wherever. They come to Japan and my God, they can speak, they're fluent, they can read and write because they've done the hours of training, you know. And it's sometimes really kind of embarrassing. I've been here, 30 plus years now and can't write. And for my generation, that's normal, but for the young generation, this is not normal, So whatever, we are what we are. I've spent my hours doing different things. But I go for it, I try it. Give speeches. NHK comes in, sticks the camera in your face, and you're on the evening news, and you just whatever, just go for it. It's one advantage we Westerners have over Japanese, and speaking very, very generally, generically. For us, we have more of a whatever, just give it a try, and if it screws up, shrug and move on. But a young Japanese person who's been to school to study English, they know it's not perfect, but their culture doesn't really allow them to treat it lightly and to shrug your shoulders, So for them, it's much more embarrassing to make mistakes. So the culture here does not make it easy to learn another language. Whereas for most of us Westerners, whatever, we babble away and it doesn't make much difference. So there's a cultural difference there. Dots, dots, dots. I think there was another question there earlier. I don't. Oh yeah, how did I get into this? Yeah. Talk about open-ended question, How did I find Japanese prints, That's without wanting to be sarcastic here, whatever. Sorry, no problem. We laugh about this, but I get interviewed and TV'd and magazined and stuff here in Japan really, really regularly, And there's two kinds of interviews. Whatever. I'm semi being facetious. There's two kinds of interviews, and you never know. Well, you tell the people, okay, they can come, or your staff lines it up and they come. Okay, 3:00, in comes the girl from the whatever media company it is. And within seconds, I can tell this is going to be a fun interview and it's going to be useful and stuff's going to come out of it. Or it's going to be, oh my God, I've got to just put the fake smile on and go through it. And the difference is how well that media person is prepared. If they've gone to our website and dug around, if they've read previous stories about me, if they've done some background, if they've looked into this a little bit, then there's a chance that it's going to be an interesting interview. But if her first question is, when did you first find out about Japanese woodblock prints, or how long have you been in Japan, or how old are you, whatever, if the first question show me that she's done absolutely no research whatsoever, then I know that it's going to be just pointless, because the only questions I'm going to get are the ones that don't really have any interesting things to say, Whatever, I smile and I grin and I bear it. You once you get into a little bit of a public situation, you have to do it. You can't just shrug your shoulders and say, get out of here. You got to do the thing properly. So, But this is asking me. I'm not. It sounds like I'm shooting at you. I'm sorry for just asking a question. You didn't come here to interview me professionally, so there's no reason to be that you should have prepared. I'm sorry. So please don't misunderstand that. But that question, how did you get into Japanese? What about prints? I'm laughing about it here. Is the single most common question I get from here in Japan. And it's simple. It's really, really funny. It was when I was still single back in Canada. I was still at that point toying with being a musician or something to do with the music business. It had become bit by bit clear to me that I wasn't going to be good enough to make a career in music. I was trying to be a classical flutist. And it's an extremely, astonishingly competitive business. To become an orchestral flutist, there's 1,000 people looking for every job. And I had lots of nice talent, could do a real good job, but what I didn't have was the ability, you've already heard me talk about it, the ability to sit in the classroom and go through the stages you have to go through to get good at something. I totally didn't have that. So it was inevitable that I wouldn't make it in that field. And at some point this dawned on me. I got blown out of an audition. So I was a bit that loose. I was working for a music company in Toronto doing, manager type stuff, running the place. But anyway, I was single, living by myself. I'm not really a sort of a housekeeper-y type, so I didn't cook and stuff. And at that time in Toronto, this is the mid-1970s, I guess, 1975, 76, somewhere around there. At that time back in Toronto, there was a kind of a boom in Japanese restaurants. And by now it's probably a vast explosion, but back then there was a boom in it. There was a dozen or so Japanese restaurants opened in Toronto. I got in the habit of going to them. I'd been to one and found it pleasant. I had no knowledge of Japan or interest in Japan, and didn't know anything at all about Japan. Just it was curious, what's this restaurant like? I'd also been to Hungarian restaurants, whatever, you name it. Single guy with no cooking, so. And I tried one of these Japanese restaurants. It was kind of cool. The food was light. I didn't eat too much. I'm a light guy. And of course, they'd done it up right with the waitresses in some kind of kimono stuff or whatever. I'm like, wow. So I try another one. It's also cool. Try another one, and I got really sort of a bit hooked on that. Tried to ask one of those girls for a date once. That's a different story. My God, that was a disaster. Anyway, so I'm getting a little bit interested in this word Japan. Nothing serious, just the food, and these girls looked attractive and whatever. Typical, Western male behavior, whatever it is. So I leave the music company one day, check out at 6 o'clock, whatever. Boogie downtown on the subway, and I'm walking towards one of these restaurants. And on the sidewalk, some Queen Street in Toronto, and there was a little tiny gallery there called the Stuart Jackson Gallery. He's still there in Toronto, though he's moved now. I think he's on Dundas Street, I'm not sure. And it's a little tiny gallery, like a little one-room tiny place. And he must have been some sign on the sidewalk that said, Japanese prints exhibition, whatever. And I'm like, I'm not the gallery type, and this is sort of a little bit pretentious, kind of an expensive looking place, but whatever. Go inside. And I didn't know it that day. I didn't understand what had happened that day, but actually it was, we tell this story later. It's a life-changing experience, although I didn't recognize it at that moment. And what he had done, Stuart, the guy who runs that gallery, what he had done is what we do here in our shop. He had taken a selection of small prints, and what they were now, I have no memory at all, just they were Japanese prints of some small kind. He had taken some small prints and he displayed them on the wall, and he had done what you need to do. He'd put them under a nice side light. And any regular listeners to me, we talk about this all the time. You've been in my shop, you know what I'm talking about. Because the paper is thick, if you put a side raking light on it, you get a beautiful three-dimensional effect on a traditional kind of print, and it just looks good enough to eat. There's people that don't care about it, there's people that don't get it, and there's people that say, oh my God, look at that. And I was that type. And right there, standing, looking at those things on that wall, I probably asked him, what's going on? What is this? These are Japanese prints. And I met him again later. He doesn't know anything about the technique of how they're made or whatever. All he knew was that there they were, and that I didn't buy any. They were really expensive. This was an upscale gallery, and they were hundreds and hundreds of dollars each. But clearly, right there, standing there on my way to dinner, looking at that stuff on that wall, absolutely a seed went in. This was 1976 or 7 or somewhere. I don't know. I have to work it out. And the rest of the story is easy. I know at some point later, after I was back in Vancouver, I met some girl on the train on the way back to Vancouver, a young Japanese girl. We start living together in Vancouver. I get a job back at the same music store again. And as a kind of a hobby, one thing to do one evening, I thought, let me see if I can try making one of those prints. How difficult can it be? A piece of wood, paper, pigment. It's really low tech. Obviously, anybody can do it. There's no internet, there's no books, there's no nothing. This is 1979 by now or something. So I did it. I tried making one. Got a piece of wood that was ready for the fireplace. It was a piece of maple. Didn't have any tools. An X-Acto knife, which I've still got here. Is that going to go in a museum one day? Didn't have the rubbing tool, the Baron. I just used a rice scoop. Paper was just whatever was in the house. Didn't have any Japanese paper. And I sketched something. Hacked up that piece of wood. Must have been watercolors from the hobby shop or something. Tried rubbing it with the rice scoop. Peeled the paper off. And I'm like, that didn't work. It doesn't look like what I saw in that gallery there. It was a fiasco, just a sloppy, wet, sticky mess, of course. Nothing. In retrospect, I know now, of course, without washi, without, the wood is not so important, the rubbing tool, whatever, but without washi, it's completely, totally pointless. It doesn't work. Because with a good piece of washi, the paper's made with all these interlocked fibers. And during the process of rubbing on the block, the pigment gets picked up into all these fibers. And that's where the beauty comes from. Whether or not, you put the right light or whatever, that's where the beauty comes from. You get an old piece of Western paper, and I was probably just using a piece of copy paper. It doesn't do that. And that was what I had misunderstood. I thought it was pigment on top of paper. And it's not. It's pigment inside deep, rich, luscious Japanese washi. That's why my first print was just a joke, and I didn't know any of this then. I thought it was pigment on paper. Anyway, whatever, throw it away. I just threw the block straight back into where I had got it, into the fireplace. I don't know, what do you call it? Where the lumber is stored next to the fireplace. But at some point, must have been weeks later, whatever, I'm going to try again. Because I couldn't forget how beautiful those things were. And I tried again. And here I am. That was 1979 or so. And this is now, where are we now? 2017. And please don't laugh about this, but I really want to try and keep this thought in mind that here I am. I'm going to try again because I haven't got it figured out yet. That's spoken half facetiously, but X% still is true, I want to try and keep that. One day, if I keep this up, I'll get good at this. Oh, look at this, I missed these. Group of 4. Again, sorry guys, and it's just rolling by the set. Oh, there's questions again, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is a good question. We talked about this last night. If you were to do it all over again, how would you approach becoming a block carver? That's a fabulous question. It's going to repeat again what I said last night. And I got in a mess last night because I tried to explain too many technical things, and the field of view is too small and it didn't work. So I'm going to answer the same question now in a much more generic way. It ties in great with what I just said, how I first started. I got that X-Acto knife, picked up a piece of paper, whatever. You know, Canadian boy, whatever, just do it yourself. You know, if you sit around waiting for someone to teach you or train you or whatever, you're going to wait a long time. You have to be the, whatever, just try stuff. That's not how a young Japanese person looks at the world, but it's how the culture I grew up in looked at the world. And that's how I tried to play flute. That's how I tried to play saxophone. That's how I tried to make woodblock prints. You know, just give it a go. What's the worst that could happen? It's not going to bite you, you know. And it worked if I put "worked" in quotation marks. I did. I made a first print, a second print, a third print. They got better. And a good point was that I had a specific goal in mind. I want to make prints that look like those Japanese ukiyo-e prints. So because there was a goal, you measure each step is in terms of its direction towards or away from that goal. So there's a good thing and a bad thing here. The good thing is that with a clear goal, your results get closer and closer to that goal. The downside is that because I'm doing it by myself, with no knowledge of how other people do it, or with no guidance or with no teaching, then the means you use to reach that goal will almost certainly not be the same as the means that the people in the old days used to reach that goal. If you see what I mean, there's traditional Japanese prints, which means there was a traditional way of making traditional Japanese prints. And I didn't know those methods. So long story short, the way I ended up using this knife that I'm using right now differs quite a lot from the way that people are trained to use it. And my friend Asakamoto Haru, I can never speak his name when I'm speaking English. I can speak it fine when I'm speaking Japanese. Asuka Sensei, Asakamoto Haru. He is exactly my age, 65. He trained here in the old way of doing it at the Takamisawa workshop. So it's a perfect example. If you look at his prints and look at my prints, well, he's always full of praise for my stuff. He's a polite guy, but also he can recognize there's some good work there. And I'm very much full of praise for his prints. This guy, he's got a good taste, he's got a good sense of this, he knows what he's doing. So there we are, we're both making pretty good stuff. But he does it absolutely in the old traditional way, and I do it in my self-trained cowboy way. And the longer I have experience with this, I have to admit, and this actually not admit, that's the wrong word, I have to stay. His way is better. And again, because if there's a specific goal in mind, it makes sense. We talked about this with the wood a minute ago. If you want your prints to look like classical ukiyo-e prints, then it makes sense to use the same materials and technology and tools that made those prints. It's not that there's no other way to do it, but that it makes most sense to use those things. So his way of carving is much more efficient than mine. It's much more, not sure what adjectives, it's better than mine. It does the right job because, as I said, that's the technology that was used to make the original prints. And where I got tongue-tied yesterday was in trying to explain what is physically different. The way he holds the knife is different. Let me switch to the other screen just for a sec. Again, I'm not going to get too technical because nobody's really interested in this. It's a right-handed, where's the window? It's a right-hand, right-handed blade. There's a bevel. I can't do this in mirror format, sorry. There's a flat back and a front bevel. And this is for a right-handed person. So the old traditional technique, you hold the knife with the flat side here, and you get over your block and you look like this. Your block is here and you're carving this way. It seems quite difficult, and actually at first it is. It's really difficult to use, but it turns out that it's much, much better that way. What I did, I came along, I got this knife. It was a right-handed knife. I didn't even know there were left and right versions, but Dave grabs this knife one day, picks it up. I didn't know about that, so I just put it in front of me and carved along the wood. Now it works because left hand holding and right hand holding going through the wood is the same, but the mood is different. You can see where the lines are coming. You can see where you're going. Your wrist is much more flexible. Here, you can't even see where you're going. It's just coming, always surprising you. So this is not a good way to hold the knife. It works. The prints end up looking the same, but it's nowhere near as efficient. And the question was, again, long answers to these questions. But yeah, if I were starting again, if I were 15, 20, what number? Yeah, I would get a left-handed knife, hold it outside, and start training by cutting small circles, small circles, small circles. And I would end up being a much better carver. I'm 65 now. Could it really be possible that if I decided to sort of start all over again, I could do that? Well, I don't know. I mean, in practical sense right now, no, of course not. I've got to keep going. This block is waiting. I mean, people are waiting. There's a young boy here working with us, a young boy from China. He's not allowed to stay in Japan. He's a tourist, so he comes here for a while, goes back to Hong Kong, comes here, goes back to Hong Kong. I've put him on my blog. He's the boy that carved that Hatsune Miku picture, for those of you who have seen our blog. Anyway, he's training here in Japan, and he learned first from my website, my videos, and everything else. And once he came here, the first day, I could recognize his skill, recognize what he's doing. He says, can he study with me here? And I said, no, absolutely no. But let me get on the phone, because I know a guy. And we went to talk to Asuka Sensei, and that young Chinese boy now has spent it's over a year now. He spent the last over a year here as a tourist. He's not allowed to work. Here as a tourist, in Asakusa's workshop, Asuka Sensei's workshop. And at my insistence, he is learning the proper classical way rather than the do-it-yourself way. And this kid is so good. He's Chinese, so he knows calligraphy, he knows flow, he knows brush strokes. And his character is half Japanese. He's just not interested in the Chinese prints, which are attractive in an artistic sense, but they're nowhere near anything near as technically interesting as the Japanese prints, or as lusciously beautiful. So he's got these two quirks of his character. He loves Japanese prints, and he's got that oriental training of calligraphy, and he's crazy. He's crazier than me, or as crazy as me, and he is going to be so good. So it's a little bit, what's that expression, living vicariously? You live through somebody else, something you can't do yourself. I mean, this guy is now doing what I sort of wish I'd been able to do. It's okay, I'm not ashamed of what I'm doing or anything, but when you think of how it could be better, this boy is having the chance to, with this training, his inherent talent already that he's got, and the training that he's getting now, he is going to be so good. He's the best thing to come down the pipe in the post-war era, absolutely. Me and Asuka Sensei at the moment, we're trying to do what we can to get him into the country. We just did a whole ton of paperwork for him in the last week. Is it that time already? It is 9:25. We're trying to get this boy a visa. I'm not a company. I'm a proprietorship. I can't import labor. Japan makes it so difficult to get labor from overseas, of course. And Asuka Sensei is the same. He's just this guy in a room, So we can't bring this boy in. But we've put together a package for the immigration people. And the young guy, Chon-san, is at the moment, now he's going back to Hong Kong next week because his visa's running out. Good morning, you're live. Have you been on before?
No,
this is Nakamura-san.
Hi.
She's not a printer here. She's a.
Whatever.
She speaks English really, really, really well. So they're seeing this, right?
Okay.
They're watching the
okay.
carving here,
Right.
and they can also see that.
I'm not Shiba-san. Don't get confused.
Is that what happened last week? Somebody wrote "Hello Shiba." Soka.
Yeah, to Keiko-san. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, this is, let me hear. This is Nakamura-san. She's here usually just one day a week. Yeah, I wish more.
Hi.
What can I do? What can I say to make you come more often? How can I make myself more attractive? Make this job more attractive.
I try to make my job. Yeah.
She has another job, quote, real job, but she's doing a wonderful job for us. How did we start? You came for a print party or something? No. How did we?
Yeah.
How did we get started? Asaka Sensei?
Yes, Asaka Sensei.
So what are you doing over there? You're training?
Yes, as an amateur, yes.
For carving?
I tried.
Okay. And because you can speak English, he said, Dave, there's a young woman here. She's good at English. She can help you.
Introduced
Okay. So the main attraction was your English ability. Are you going to be carving one day for us?
Hi.
We don't talk about that right now, okay?
We'll see you later.
Thank you, okay. Thanks, Nakamura-san. そうか、パーティー、夜の間にようやく入ったんですが、ちょっと check the computer out there and see what came in. It all went into the schedule, but I probably didn't write it on the calendar. So don't trust the calendar, trust the computer.
I got you.
Here we are, next one, Kawai-san today, isn't it? Kawai-san and Nakamura-san together. They're going to be doing this. So it's nearly 9:30. What have we got? I got, actually that's it. I'm finished this little area. Let me finish clearing this zone, and then it'll be time to sign off, because I'm also on duty out there today. Morning, you're in.
Morning.
I didn't talk about you today, right? So we had a funny experience yesterday. Maybe you say, whatever. I'd been chatting about him, and he's on the train or in the coffee shop listening to me talk about him. So I kept quiet today.
Okay.
I talked about Chon-san.
Yeah.
Maybe he's next. I don't know. So. I know, as I just said to Nakamura-san, check the schedule, the calendar. I know there's reservations changed during the night. So yesterday's people, Nishimori-san, I talked to them on the phone. They made a reservation for the wrong day. They thought they were coming today.
Today?
So they wanted to come at 10 o'clock today. So we changed the reservation to 10 o'clock today. But then they phoned again. So anyway, look at the look at the calendar. So anyway, there we are. Let me just finish this off here, and it'll be time to sign off. It's upstairs today for me, and Lee-san's here. We're doing some sizing. All of a sudden, with all this change in printers, with Aimi-san going out, we've had to scramble. And Kubota-san, one of our outside printers, he used to work for the Adachi company. He's stepped up to the plate, and he's going to be doing some of the Heroes prints for us. So we've got to get some paper ready for him today. So me and Aoyama-san will be upstairs doing sizing for that to get the Heroes back on track, because the Kickstarter's opening and we just whatever. Anyway, that's enough. I'll be back. If the shop's not too busy this afternoon, I'll be back here at 5:30 for another session, which will be better for our European friends. And then today's Saturday, so tomorrow's Sunday. So tomorrow morning I should be here, 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, with some more tentacles, suckers, and dots. Thanks very much for putting up with all this, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you again.